everyone talking about 10 cannabis scents. I tried to choose a good mix of designer, niche, ones that focus on different aspects of cannabis so that this is a more diverse list and not just simply the top 10 that smell good or top 10 that just happen to have cannabis in them. So, and that also leads me to the point, these are not all ones that I personally think smell good, but that comes down to my taste about some of them being more earthy, etc. And I'll go over that with each one and let you know what seems like it's just my taste versus how it might be for other people. So let's kick this off with number 10, Maison Margiela Music Festival. So this is based on the idea of like Woodstock 1969, more so than say Coachella or some modern one. And you can definitely tell. Not that there wouldn't be weed smoke in the air at obviously Coachella or any of those newer ones, but this is like very hippie, dirty-ish. And the notes in it are weed accord, violet leaves, red apple, patchouli, tobacco, incense, leather, cedarwood, and cypress. I knew looking at the notes that I wasn't going to like this. Patchouli, tobacco, weed, accord, just like all that stuff mixing together sounded pretty pungent to me, and it is. So yeah, especially on me, the tobacco, cypress, incense, and patchouli really dominate. But I will say this does actually smell very high-end niche, even though Margiela is more like in the designer category. So if you like really earthy, dirty sort of fragrances, this is a good option to try. But if you're looking for something that simply just smells good, pleasant, appealing, compliment pulling, no. Not every scent has to be like that though, so that's okay. Next up, we've got Chronic by 1969. This has notes of Petitgrain, bitter orange, bitter grapefruit, Russian clary sage, Virginian cedarwood, cannabis accord, amber, patchouli, vetiver, cashmere wood, moss, and musk. Another one that is too earthy for my taste. There's almost like a potted soil type of element to it, like you're smelling a weed plant while it's still growing in the ground, almost like a greenhouse style humidity. It's interesting in its vividness, but it's not something that I enjoy smelling. Again, though, this is great for someone to try if you're into the idea of an earthy take on cannabis. Next up, Matthew Miller by Verduu. Top notes are blackcurrant and basil, middle are incense and cannabis, and base are smoke, vetiver, and leather. I actually think that I would like this better without the cannabis and patchouli, of course. I've smelled some really nice cannabis notes that are used in a really light and fresh fragrance way, and we're going to get to those later on the list because these are going kind of from the ones that are not so much mine all the way to the ones that I really love. This one would have already been more than enough pungent green without the heavier notes in it. The cannabis just really adds even more kind of darkness to me. And by the dry down, it's a lot nicer of a smoky green, but this is still more in the vein of if you like really like intense bitter green type of scents. Next up, Cannabis by Malin and Goetz, and this has black pepper and bergamot, magnolia, patchouli, cedar, and sandalwood. It smells less pungent than I was expecting, especially because it's literally called Cannabis, particularly in the opening. There is almost like a lemon Clorox cleaning spray vibe in the opening. It's somewhat astringent, bitter, and kind of high pitch, and then it becomes more herbal as it progresses. But even during the herbal phase, it never gets that dirty to me. This one is if you kind of want the idea of something that has a cannabis note and like the fun part but doesn't smell too much like cannabis in any way. I actually think this was kind of weirdly named to be called that, but I wanted to include it because we want to run the gamut of all different types of cannabis scents, and some of them are like this where it's kind of going for the vague idea of it but really doesn't smell like it at all. Next up, Ganja by Comme. This has cumin, black pepper, cannabis, mate, mastic or lentisque, patchouli, gaiac wood, and olibanum. And to me, this smells like smoking weed in a restaurant kitchen. There are some fragrances, as mentioned with cannabis as a note, that just don't smell like weed smoke to me whatsoever. Maybe they even smell like weed, but not like smoking weed, but this one does. It's like a really diesely, earthy strain, herbaceous, pungent, spicy, very creative. So if you like the idea of a more aromatic, like spicy herbal take on it, check it out. Next up, we've got Gorseland by Jorum Studio. They do such high-end, interesting, unique fragrances. I love it. So the notes in this are gorse, apple, lemon, chamomile, and lavender. black elder, geranium, and neroli, and of course cannabis. So as with every other Jorum studio fragrance I've tried, this is so unique. I've never smelled anything like it. It's almost like a field of plants on another planet or something. It's kind of pungent. There's like a mentholy herbalness, underlying sort of fresh sweetness in it. And it's not something that I would personally wear, but it's really intriguing to smell. So if you like unique fragrances, that's such a good one to check out. Even if you don't think you might like to wear it, just buy a sample and, enjoy it. Because, yeah, it's very, very interesting. And again, more on the kind of mentholy herbal side. Now we're getting in the list towards ones that I actually kind of actively really like. This is 212 Heroes for Men by Carolina Herrera. I'm picky about Carolina Herrera scents. Like, they're the kind of thing that's almost like a band like the Rolling Stones or something, that some of what they put out is so catchy and great, and others is just duds because they just have such a big catalog that it kind of seems like they're just throwing stuff out there. But this has notes of pear, ginger, lemon, haze, cannabis, geranium oil, leather, wood, sage, and musk. To me, it's really fresh in a unique way. The pear really stands out in the opening, and the ginger kind of gives it some zing, so it doesn't go too aquatic, which pear can sometimes do. The cannabis note here does not smell like you just smoke. It just adds a really bright greenness to it, like a really high quality strain. And I like when the cannabis note is used that way. The leather has this intriguing note in the background. It's not super present until later in the dry down. And the sage isn't really overly sharp or herbal here either. It also has a skateboard bottle design. Some people complain about that. They think it's too babyish. I think it's fun. Most fragrance bottles are pretty mature or simple. So it's kind of fun to have something like kooky once in a while. Next up, we have Blue Dream by Xyrena, obviously named after the strain. Notes of pepper, blueberry, and cannabis. Blue Dream is my favorite strain of weed, and such an annoying stoner thing to have a favorite strain of weed, but I would say it's a pretty accurate representation as far as like a synthetic fragrance version goes. It's also so fun that the juice, the liquid of the fragrance, is blue. I think that just really adds to the fun appeal, and Xyrena do so much cool, unique, interesting things like this. I wouldn't wear it personally because, as with real weed, it just gets too pungent on me, but I think someone could totally pull it off in the right context. It's more like blueberry bubblegum with darker notes type of thing, not so, overly sweet like blueberry can sometimes go, and also not as overall pungent for all of it. Next up, second to last, we've got another Carolina Herrera Bad Boy Le Parfum. And I avoided trying anything in the Bad Boy series for a long time because people talk so much shit, partially because of the lightning bottle, which again they think is silly. I think it's kind of cool. Top notes in this are cannabis and grapefruit, middle are black pepper and geranium, and base are leather and vetiver. The cannabis opening in this feels pungent at first, but not in a way that makes you just smell like you just smoked weed. And more like opening a high quality fresh eighth in a jar while laying in the sun drinking grapefruit soda. That is completely just kind of like the vibe of the smell that I get from it. And I think it actually works really well. The grapefruit, geranium, and fresh weed almost combine into like a pineapple-y accord, which is pretty cool. The black pepper adds a nice little kick, but it doesn't go too sharp. It doesn't go barbershop-y. And as it dries down, the more leathery base comes out, but it's still bright. So it's just overall a really nice mix. And apparently I just really like the way that Carolina Herrera uses cannabis scents to really kind of make them so that they still smell very clearly like fresh cannabis, but not like gross smoked ashy weed or something like that. Lastly, this is my favorite on the list, Cologne Fly Away by Thierry Mugler. The only notes they disclose are grapefruit and cannabis. And this to me is like opening a jar of fresh weed while wearing Dolce & Gabbana Light Blue Forever. It does not smell like smoking weed. It's not pungent or dank, and much less so actually than the dry down of Light Blue Forever. But it's like a really high quality, like Blue Dream type of bright, almost blueberry fresh, citrusy type of weed, covered in trichomes with dewdrops of fresh pink grapefruit on top. It's unique, it's interesting, but it's so pleasant, fresh, and appealing at the same time. Amazing for a hot day. So that is 10, and hopefully this gave you an idea of kind of some of the gamut of what cannabis scents can be like. There are obviously many more out there, but I think these 10 showcase kind of the extremes on both sides, from when it's like really, really wearable to the point of just being like anybody could wear it, some people might even consider, basic designer, to the side of being so experimental and earthy that it's like you really have to kind of actively be wanting to walk around smelling like smoked weed to wear that. If you have a favorite cannabis scent, let me know what you think, and I will put links in the description where you can get a bottle or a sample of the ones mentioned.